So, hi everyone, and thank you very much for watching or listening. Liam Hartree here today with another episode of Presenting Champions for the Simply Inspired podcast. And today I'm joined by a very, very special guest. I'm truly honored to welcome the king of the Journeymen, Peter Buckley, former professional boxer who competed in 300 professional fights. I mean, that is something you don't hear every day. His life has been adapted into a book called King of the Journeyman. There's a film adaptation, I believe, in the works, and as well as a number of fights that Peter had. Some of the names he's been in there with, there's so many. I've actually got a list here, but we're talking Duke McKenzie, Nassim Hamed, Jason Cook, Paul Ingle, Lee Selby, Scott Harrison, Michael Gomez, Gavin Reese, John Murray, Kell Brook, and a lot more. I mean, wow. So, Champ, it's a real pleasure to have you on the show today, and thank you for making the time for this, mate. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. More pleasure.
Absolutely. So, I'm actually going to start with your book. So, even though this is not necessarily working through everything in linear time, I have to ask, when you started out with boxing, did you ever imagine in your wildest dreams that one day your life would be in print the way it is now?
No, of course I didn't know. It was like at the end of my career that, well, like I say, it was a few years ago that someone approached me about a book. A few people have approached me over the years, but nothing really come of it. And then one day, Chris, the writer, got in touch with me, and he just wanted to know would I be interested in a book, and because he lived in Birmingham, I used to meet up with him, and he just went from there.
Yeah, amazing. And how does it feel for your life to be in print in that way now and to be out there?
Yeah, I'm very proud of my book. Yeah, like I say, there's a few boxers who have done books over the years, but it was a goal I wanted to achieve, and I achieved it in the end. Yeah.
Absolutely, an amazing achievement, and really gives you the respect and the credit you deserve as well. What is happening with the film adaptation and that side of things? Because I've heard there was a lot of talks about that at a point in time. Is that still going ahead? What's the scope?
No, well, what it was, someone approached me, God, probably 10 years ago, through Facebook. A geezer called Mike Flavely, who worked for George Tillman Jr. at State Street Pictures. And there was talk about doing a film, they wrote scripts, and it went on for a couple of years, and they was trying to get funding for it, and that. They was talking real ridiculous money, like $40 million and that, to get the film going, and there was looking for funding. But it like just fizzled out in the end. Like I say, I had some scripts. I didn't really like them at first. To read on the scripts, read them, weren't 100% based on my life, and I told them that. But they said, like, they have to make changes to dramatise it and that. But it was okay, but then it just fizzled out in the end, yeah.
Oh, that's a shame. Fingers crossed, something will come back around. I have to ask though, if the film ever does get made, which actor would you like to play you?
I don't know, I've been asked that a few times. They did come up with a few actors. They did put a few names to me at the time, and some of them was okay. And like, but it was, I just basically, I left it all to them to do. Like, there was phoning me regular, done all the, like I say, all the scripts and that. And like I say, I read them and it's okay. But they did mention a few actors here and there. I can't really remember who it was now, but there was going to, when there was on about filming, it was on about doing half here, half in America. And it all sounded good. Like I say, it went on for a few years. And George Tillman, who's a really good writer, he's just done the George Foreman film, you say, Big George. And he's a really good writer. He's a real nice bloke. But like I say, he found the way he approached, got in touch with me because he was on a train or something, and he picked up the Washington Post, and I happened to be in the Washington Post at the time, and he just thought it would be a great story to do in a. Like I say, it just fizzled out after a few years.
Yeah. Well, like I say, fingers crossed that'll come back around. We hope so. But at least the book's out there and people can know about your life that way. So now we'll go back into obviously your boxing career and some fights now in a moment. But as soon as we've started more with the present day and the future and everything, I think some people would be interested to know about what your life has been like post-boxing. I know obviously you've talked about this in a number of interviews like this and publications and everything, but still in the years since boxing, first of all, how much do you miss it when you look back on your career now?
Oh, I miss it. I do. I didn't miss. Look, say when I retired, it was on my terms. I got to 300 fights, which I never ever thought I'd do when I first started. That was people said to me, "Oh, was your aim to get to 300 fights?" Well, that's just being ridiculous because like I got back into boxing because I was in a lot of trouble when I was younger, and it was just something to do. It basically got me out of trouble, and it did. People, the old cliche, boxing saved my life. It really did with me because I was from when I was 15 till I was 20. I was always in that prison and that, and I was just going nowhere. And by chance meeting, I met an old pro called Rocky Lauder from the same area as me, and he basically got me back into boxing, and I never looked back then, and I never got in trouble again. I just stayed out of trouble, and I was just fighting week after week after week, and sometimes I'd get a phone call on the day to fight, and I'd just go and do it because that's what I love doing.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. A short notice. We'll come to all that in a minute. Real quick, I also want to get your advice for, like, say if there's somebody watching this who is in and out of trouble, or they got family members or people who are close to them who is in and out of trouble the way you once were, because you've turned it around in the way you have. I think you're in a good position to pass on a little bit of knowledge. What would you advise people to do if they know someone who's sort of on that destructive pattern, if you get what I mean with this?
Well, like you say, you got to want to do it yourself. Look, so I was going nowhere in life from a young kid. I was young, made mistakes, paid for my mistakes. You know what I mean? And boxing, like I say, when a friend of mine got me back into the box, I was a very good amateur boxer, you see. And I started boxing when I was 10, and my last fight was when I was 15, and my last fight was in ABC finals against Mark Tibbs, what I lost to in the final. But I was a really good amateur. And I had 54 fights, lost 4. I got to the schoolboy semi-finals the first year, got beat by Nigel Wenson, who was a great fighter, a great champion, went on to become a great pro. Then I got to the semi-finals of 1 year, the junior ABAs, couldn't make the weights, so I was out of that then. And then my last year as an amateur, like I had about 9 fights, 10 fights to get to the finals, and I lost to Mark Tibbs, who used to train Dylan White, who's a very successful professional trainer now. But you've got to want to, people said to me, look, with the boxing, it did keep me out of trouble, but I needed something to do. I didn't want to go and work in a factory and 9 to 5 job, no disrespect, but that weren't for me. And boxing to me, like, I love fighting anyway. I used to be fighting a lot when I was a kid. So to do it in the ring and get paid for it that was a bonus for me.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes sense. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
When you reflect on your career now, and this is a pretty big question, so I'm sorry about that. But in terms of some of your proudest moments, because I was thinking about this. I mean, obviously, we're talking 300 fights. I'd love to ask you so many questions about so many things, but we'd be here until next week. So I was
Yeah.
okay, how do we pack this in? So one of the things is actually just to talk about some of your favorite fights. Now, I'd imagine there's quite a few, but if we had to pick, 2, 3, 4 absolutely standout moments from your career, what would they be and why?
Well, I won 2 Midland titles at 2 different weights. I won one at super featherweight, and then I actually moved down in weight to super bantamweight. So I really was a super bantamweight. When I first started, I was fighting at featherweight. Super bantamweight weren't a division, and it was bantamweight and then feather. But I boxed for the vacant Midland super featherweight title, won that over 10 rounds, defended it against Brian Robert Telford, and I knocked him out in the 10th round. And then I was still fighting, but I injured my shoulder in that fight. I pulled a muscle in my shoulder, and instead of having 6 months off to get it repaired properly, I was off for about 6 weeks, probably 7 weeks, and I was still fighting. I had a lot of trouble with my shoulder for many years. I used to have a sports treatment on it, all that. In the end, the only thing that works is acupuncture and coupling. That's what I used to have before fights and that. And it used to work, sometimes. But sometimes I've been warming up in the change rooms, and my arm would pop again, my shoulder going on, literally going to a fight one-armed. And I knew how to do that in the end. It was something that I learned to live with, if you know what I mean. But my winning 2 Midland titles, then I moved down to super bantamweight. And I boxed Matt Harris over 10 rounds. I'd previously boxed Matt at a day's notice in Wolverhampton or Dudley, somewhere like that. And I had a bad hand when I boxed him. And I just went through the motions. He beat me on points. He was unbeaten. But when they offered me the Midland title fight at super bantamweight, 10 rounds, I had about 6-7 weeks to train. Well, that's a lifetime for me to train. And I've done the weight perfect, and I stopped him in 6 rounds. And that night, he weren't beating me basically. You know what I mean? And looks like then I boxed for a WBA Intercontinental title fight in Austria, in Vienna, in Austria, sorry, against Harold Gear, who was unbeaten, who went on to box for the world title. He didn't win it, but actually boxed him over 12 rounds, and I really held my own with him. I boxed really good, dropped him in the 9th round, had him out on his feet. The referee basically saved him. I beat him up the last 3 rounds, and they give it him on points, close fight. I was never going to get it abroad. So, like I say, he boxed for the world title next, and he got knocked out, but he still fought for the world title. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Some amazing highlights there. And I love asking that question because, you never know what's going to come back, especially with someone who's had the amount of fights that you have had as well. You mentioned about fighting abroad there as well. I think that's something interesting that people don't always touch on as much as they could, is obviously one of the benefits of boxing outside of the money and all the other things is actually getting to travel. And I think this might be a cool question for some of the young boxers watching this. Do you have favorite place that boxing took you during your career that you probably wouldn't have visited otherwise if it wasn't for boxing?
Well, I boxed in Germany, I boxed in Denmark, Scotland, Ireland, all that. But Germany was good because I went over there with a gym mate who was supposed to fight, but his fight got pulled. So he was over there for about 4 days, and we boxed on the Saturday night, and then we went out partying. Do you know what I mean? And we had a really good time over there. And Denmark was quite nice as well. But I always got treated like when I boxed in Austria. I stayed in the big health resort, and it was like in the sticks. But after I boxed there, it was like a world title fight to them there, national anthems and all that. And they had a big after party. Well, the next night, because I was still in Austria, it was in this little village, and I happened to walk into this, like a pub it was, what I'd call a pub. And as I walked in there, everyone turned around and looked at me, look, so we get the 1800s, this pub. And they all recognised me from it had been on their local news and all that. And next thing, I'm drinking with all these locals, and they was buying me drinks like that. But an experience like that was, was really good. Because I actually went in there on my own, because my manager didn't drink or nothing. He stayed in the hotel. I was just bored, so I went for a walk around and ended up in this pub drinking with all these Austrians who'd saw me on the telly and that. So that was good.
Wow, that's an amazing highlight as well, isn't it? Fair play. That's lovely. And I'm sure people have asked you probably 1,000 times about toughest fights and everything. So hopefully it's not a boring question for you, but nonetheless, and obviously, as you know all too well, with toughest fights, I don't just mean, who hit the hardest, but obviously it can be technical stuff. It can be something that was going on in your life outside the ring, and you have to focus through that to fight or whatever, different ways, obviously. But yeah, which one, and it's probably another really big question as well, but which one stand out as some of your toughest fights that you had out of all of them?
Well, I'd say my first toughest fight, and probably the best boxer I always cast one bit box, was Duke McKenzie, because I wasn't a journeyman when I boxed Duke McKenzie. I'd had a few losses, but I was still ambitious and that. And then when I was offered the Duke McKenzie fight, it was only a couple of days or 2 days' notice. I really fancied the fight, because I thought he's a flyweight. I'm going to be bigger than him, but it was a whole different ball game. There was levels to box. That was the night I actually found out about the levels in boxing. I mean, he was a world-class operator. I mean, he went on to win 2 more world titles after. Lovely man, Duke McKenzie. Enough respect for him. And nice guy outside the ring. But that night, I found out the golfing class, he was just too good for me, do you know what I mean? And I went 5 rounds with him, he stopped me. And I honestly thought that was the end of my boxing career, because I'd never been stopped as an amateur or anything like that. And he beat me and stopped me, and I was really disheartened. I didn't think I'd box. I thought, oh, that's it, that's me now. I'm finished. I won't box again. My manager said to me, you boxed the geezer who was former world champion, and he went on to win another 2 world titles. Nothing to be ashamed of, because I was really hurt that I got stopped. And that's when I realised what boxing was really about. So I more or less went into a journeyman thing after that. It's like, that was the fight that woke me up, and I thought, I'm not going to reach the heights that I thought I might have reached. But so I thought, I'll treat the game, and they're going to treat me, and earn as much as I can out of it, without getting hurt, basically. But I actually boxed Alessio Freitas one night for a day's notice, and I went down to Liverpool to box him. And Gary Fornell was British champion, who I boxed twice. He happened to say to me like that, "You're boxing this lad, he's a big lad." And I was like, whatever, I weren't bothered. And because I hadn't even saw him weigh in. And as I got in the ring that night, as he was walking to the ring, I actually thought it was a wrong geezer walking to the ring. He was that big. And then he got in the ring and they read his record at 18 fights, 18 wins, 18 knockouts. I just looked at my manager and gone, "This is a nice one." He said, "Oh, you'll be all right." And I actually did okay for a couple of rounds, but he was too big for me. I weren't 100% fit, and I messed him about for a bit and that. And he actually said in Ring Magazine that the best defensive fighter he ever fought was Peter Buckley. So that was a great honour for him to say to me. But he didn't hurt me, but he was just too big, and he put me down with a body shot. I've done a couple of rounds with him, and I think after the fourth round, my manager pulled me out. There was no argument on my side. I weren't. It was like trying to move a house. I couldn't. I could fiddle him about a bit, but it was an 8 rounder, and I took the fight with a day's notice. He was very fit, and he was a lot heavier than me on the night as well. I was at featherweight. I think I weighed about 9 stone too. He weighed in the day before. I know he was 10 stone on the night, and he was a big 10 stone as well. And he was just too good for me.
Yeah, amazing stories though, isn't it? I mean, this is the thing, there's so many memories that you have to share. Do you keep in touch with any of the lads you fought nowadays? Do you see them around at conventions or at fight nights or anything that's going on like that?
No, because I don't really go to the boxing. I mean, I still watch the boxing all the time and that. And when I first packed in boxing, so I had a trainer's license, so I was on the scene for a good few years around the boxing. But then my mum, who was quite old, become ill, and I just didn't know. I was looking after my mum a lot, and I didn't have the time to go to boxing. I didn't fall out of love with it because I've always loved boxing, but my priorities come first. And so my trainer's license ran out and that. And I never got back into it. Like I say, when I first packed in boxing, I was working with some amateurs and that as well, and I was enjoying it. And now one of my grandsons go boxing. He's only 8, and he's quite good actually. You know, he's got quite a bit of talent there. I can see. You know what I mean? And I didn't get him into boxing. He loves boxing, and he goes boxing. He's doing really good. He's only 8 though, but he goes. He was going twice a week, but now he's down to once a week. He does football as well. He's only young, so he got plenty of time. You don't want to burn him out. Do you know what I mean? So just treat it as a hobby for now.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, good luck to him. I hope he goes far with it. I know he's starting out, but best wishes. And as well as that though, when it comes to your advice for boxers who are starting out, I was going to ask you this later, but as soon as we mentioned it now, I mean, obviously you have a unique perspective because first of all, you were boxing for a long time as well. Should have mentioned that at the beginning actually, but there's a lot of years there. And obviously you've seen the sport change, and you've seen the sports side, you've seen the business side, you've seen the, some of the dizzy heights, but some of the not no nice side. You've seen everything. That's what I'm trying to say. So obviously, when it comes to advice for them, people who are starting out, maybe a few things they should do, but maybe a few things they should avoid as well. Another really big question. So we have to narrow it down to maybe just 2 or 3 key ingredients, if you like, for success. Somebody starting out in the amateurs or starting out maybe just turning pro, just turning over. What would you say to those people if any of them are watching this?
Well, if you're good enough, you're going to get signed up with a good promoter. If you're good enough, because if you're not good enough, the promoters are looking for the ABA champions or the Olympians and that. So you've got the pedigree there already. But a normal kid who's just had 30 amateur fights, one half. They're probably not a world beater, but sometimes a good amateur don't always make a good pro. Prime example, in my mind, Sam Eggington. He didn't have a great amateur career, but he grew into a professional career, if you know what I mean. Sam's a prime example, I think. I mean, he's a kid who, he boxed Frankie Gavin. Frankie Gavin, in the amateurs, was beat him every day of the week, 7 days a week. But in the professional game, it's a lot different. Longer rounds, smaller gloves, no head guards. You don't always have to be a top amateur to be a top pro. And he's the prime example, Sam Eggington, to me. I mean, he had a great win the other night again. I mean, great fighter. Fights with his heart on his sleeve sometimes, but when you watch him, you're getting your money's worth. But some of these kids who turn pro and they have 10 fights, 10 wins, They start believing their own hype. They probably beat 10 journeymen who not even good journeymen, foreigners and that. So I think England's got the best journeymen we always have anyway. But when you fight 10 foreigners, you've knocked them all out. They start believing their own hype. So they've got to fight. At the end of the day, if they're going anywhere, they're going to fight someone who's hitting them back. And if they can't take one on the chin, they ain't going to last long in this game. So the need to fight some good journeymen on the way up who are going to hit them back. That's what I was always brought in as a test, because I weren't a big puncher, but I had a decent punch on me, and they knew they couldn't walk through me. I mean, I boxed quite a few kids who'd had unbeaten records, and after 4 rounds, when I'm still there, they're looking at me as if thought, he's still here. Why always blew this kid away? I was made to sterner stuff than that. So, but that's what you need. You need a good trainer as well, not someone just telling you you're great and you this and that, because everyone's got flaws. Do you know what I mean? And you got to work on them flaws. And the best place to work on them is in the gym when you're sparring. Go around the other gyms, spar good lads, spar better lads than you. That's what you got to do. It's the only way you become better. Not sparring kids who are no good or fighting kids who are no good. You got to step gradually. You got to step up. You got to step up in classes. Every little fight, you want to learn something, not just a 1 round blowout. Because you ain't learning nothing like that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, it's some rock solid advice, and it's really good to pass on some of your knowledge, in this way as well. So fair play. Now, you've seen a lot of changes in boxing, obviously, because first of all, you were in the game a long time yourself, many, many years, and obviously seeing the changes in the sport now. There's some good changes, there's some bad changes, and this question could go in all different directions. But I've seen some of the conversations, like even on Facebook, on some of Ben Dowie and some of those sorts of guys, their posts about some of the changes in boxing. I've seen you comment in little things. So what would you say would be maybe 1 or 2 really good changes, maybe 1 or 2 not so good changes? Because there's probably a lot of things you can talk about, but if there were like 1 or 2 things on each side of the fence, if you get what I mean, that you've seen, something you don't like, something you do like, in the changes in the game.
Well, I'll tell you what I don't like. I don't like these weigh-ins like of the day before. I think if you're fighting somebody, you need to be fighting them at the proper weight. It's all right weighing in on a Friday at 9 stone, but then on the Saturday you're 10 stone, so you're not fighting a featherweight, you're fighting a welterweight. So, and if you take the fight, like say, you take the fight on the day, which I've done plenty of times, they told me I've got to be 9 stone 2, 9 stone 3. What they don't realise, I'm coming in at 9 stone 3 on the day. The kid's already weighed in 24 hours before me. So when they were announcing the fight, he was 9 stone 2 and I'm 9 stone 2. I'm 9 stone 2 on the day. He was 9 stone 2 yesterday. The way him on the night, he's 10 stone 2. Boxers put a stone on it easy. But what I like, the medical side of the boxing in Britain, second to none. Do you know what I mean? I mean, I boxed a few boxers who, have been injured and that, like Spencer Oliver, Paul Ingle. I boxed Richard Benson, who, boxed Bradley Stone, and I boxed Bradley Stone as well. James Murray. I boxed a lot of boxers who have, suffered injuries or have inflicted the injuries on other fighters, and it's hard for them, but we have got the best medical in the world, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. It is second to none, 110%.
Yeah.
I'm with you on that. Yeah. And these days, though, I mean, if you don't mind me asking, do you have any health effects from the amount of fights that you've had, or you seem sharp as a razor, and
Yeah, I don't touch wood. I don't know. I've got a great memory. I remember 98% of my fights, to be honest. I really do. And I've got a great memory, and I've got no slurred words or nothing like that. I'm one of the lucky ones. I've met boxers who have had 20-odd fights, and they're a bit slurry and that. But I always had a good defence, and I never really took that much stick. And I did used to spar quite a lot as well. People used to think I didn't spar, but I used to love sparring. Sparring was like my main thing. I drove to sparring and doing pads and bags and that. And my training used to say, "Oh, no, it's all right now. You've done enough sparring this week." But I used to love sparring as well. But like I say, yeah, my memory's great. My faculties are all here. I remember everything. Yeah, so but not everyone's always that lucky. We're all made up differently. We've all got a different DNA and different makeup in us. And I didn't touch wood. I ain't really got the boxer's nose either, so that's a good thing.
No, that is a good thing, mate, and it's good to see, that you've gotten out there in one piece with everything you've achieved.
Yeah.
And getting the recognition you deserve in recent years as well. I mean, things. So Sparring then, as soon as we mentioned that, that was another thing I had for a little bit later, but we'll touch on that now. Some of your most memorable spars, because I could just tell there's going to be something good here because your face just lit up when you were talking about sparring then, you know what I mean? And so, which were some of your, are there too many to remember, or can you remember a few that
Well, I used to spar a lot of my gym mates and look, so we all learned off each other, you see. A lot of people used to say to me, I've learned a lot of you. I learned it off them as well. We all learned. I had some good fighters in my gym. Brian Coleman, Paul Wesley. Paul Wesley was who fought for the British middleweight title against Robert McCracken. Fought Steve Collins, Chris Pyatt. Paul Wesley was a great fighter. And if he would have been promoted differently when he first started, he could have won some major titles, I think. Very skillful. And he used to show me quite a lot in the gym and show me tricks. We all did really, like your RB2 said to me before, I learned a lot off you. I learned off them because we all had different styles. And I remember once I was sparring Brian Coleman and he hit me with a body shot and he broke me in half, basically. I was like, oh, I was really pissed off. And not with Brian because he caught me with the shot. It's just that I got caught and he hurt me. And I just thought, and I used to go home sometimes from the gym thinking, that's it, I've had enough there. Feel a bit stale. So I'd have a week off and then like not being phone me back up and say, oh, you left the country and just having a joke with me and that. And he said, there's a fight going in next week or whatever. I'd be all right. I'll go back up the gym and that little week off and recharge my batteries and I'd feel okay again and we'd just go again. But I used to spar a lot with Anthony Hanno, who fought for the British and Commonwealth flyweight title. Very good kid. Had 5 amateur fights. He was coming to our gym when he was 14, 15, local lad from King's Standing at the time, and where our gym was based. And he had 5 amateur fights, really good kid. He learnt on the job and he ended up fighting all around Europe, fought the best, he fought world champions. I think he rarely got stopped. But like I say, he ended up fighting for a British and Commonwealth title against Damien Kelly from Belfast, who was a very good fighter. Done 12 rounds with him and, won rounds as well. And competitive. That's from a kid who had 5 amateur fights, you know what I mean? Where Damien Kelly probably had 100, 200 amateur fights. So it's learning on the job sometimes. I mean, if Tony Hanna would have stayed amateur, he probably would have won an ABA title, got signed up by a major promoter, but we don't always choose that path, we choose a different road sometimes,
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing that I'd like to touch on, I don't know if people bring this up that much actually, but as well as being, tough and strong and training hard and having the skill set and everything physically, I think you got to have a strong mind. Like you got to have a strong mind to do what you were doing, for so many years, so many tough fights, high level guys and everything like that. So I'm just curious, like what was your process of, I mean, obviously you love to fight and you'll obviously
Yeah.
fight anyone, so that sort of speaks for itself. But I just mean like, in terms of keeping yourself sharp up here mentally, taking fights at short notice, staying prepared and boxing at a high level for the amount of years that you did. How did you do that in your mind and your emotions and everything else, as well as the physical skills, if you get what I mean with this one?
Yeah, I do get what you mean. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Well, it is sometimes I'd go to a show to be fighting an unbeaten kid and I'd be boxing in their backyard and they'd all be shouting, booing. But to me, it was like, you can bet, they'd be shouting, knock him out and all this and that. Water for ducks back to me. It's like, my goal was to show them, I ain't here to get knocked over, mate. I'm stronger than that. And sometimes it is your mental strength that does get you through a fight because I wouldn't give them the privilege, sounds mad, of knocking me out. And like, I was determined, I was doing that distance. I mean, one prime example was I boxed Bradley Price. I boxed him on the Mike Tyson undercard. Boxed him, beat me on points. That was at lightweight. About, might have been a year later, I don't know. They phoned me up once to box him in Glasgow. We were on the day. So I drove all up to Glasgow. I was fucking tired as it was, right? Got there, got out of the car. They've gone to me, you're on first, but I was like, hold on. Weigh in, jump on the scales. And then someone said to me, he's a lot heavier than you, And I was like, yeah, no, he's a lot heavier than you. And I was pissed off. And I went in there. And basically, I went in there for the money. He hit me with, he was a lot bigger than me on the night, hell of a lot bigger. He'd improved a lot from when I first boxed him. He hit me with a jab straight away, put me on the seat of my pants. Another next shot, bang, put me over. And then the referee just stopped him. But you know what? I weren't arsed that night because everything was going against me. He was heavier than me. Oh, it was supposed to be 6 rounds and it was 8 rounds. I just got out of the car, I had nets, I was still hungry. I was more or less in the ring with him fucking 15 minutes getting out of the car. I just thought, you can fuck off, like, and that night I basically, like, I just robbed the money, and like, I was really pissed off with myself after on the way back. So I thought, no, I'm better than that. I shouldn't have let him do that to me, if you know what I mean. And it pissed me off because I never used to like getting stopped. I mean, I think 10 stoppages I had on my record, 5 of them was legit. Colin McMillan was legit. Paul Lloyd was legit. And that's him having one word. Bradley Price, the second one, weren't really. I got up, stop myself. Not, I can't really think like who else stopped me. Richard Everett, that shouldn't have been stopped in my mind. I went the distance with him twice before the referee stopped it. So, but Colin McMillan generally stopped me. Duke McKenzie stopped me. I boxed Duke again the second time. I had a bad shoulder. Went down there for the money. Done 3 rounds. Pulled out of a bad shoulder. So really, so a referee stopped me because I pulled out. But I've never actually been counted out. I've never been at the 10 count. I've always finished a fight on my feet, or I pulled out the corner, or my trainers pulled me out. But I've never had the 10 count over me. And I'm proud of that with some of the big fighters I've boxed.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, so you should be, mate. I mean, this is the thing. It's well, it's really something you don't hear every day. 100%. I'm curious about this though, because you mentioned earlier about like the switch in mindset that you had. It seems we're talking about mindset from, well, about Duke McKenzie. You said earlier, you realized then that was the different levels of the game. But you have a lot to be proud of what you achieve. When you're going into a fight, though, how do you handle losing in that way? Because obviously journeymen are essential for the sport, your backbone of the sport. You teach these guys a lot of lessons they'll use later. So I understand all of that type of thing. But seriously, I mean, when I'm talking to you now, you have a lot of pride. So what was the transition you went through when you went from, you mentioned having the ambitions to obviously going into the journeyman road? Was it difficult in the beginning to switch it up like that, even though you've achieved a lot in that mode, if you get what I mean?
Yeah, I do. It was, and it weren't, because I'd be going up to Scotland and places like that, fighting my heart out, right? And they'd give it the other kid by a point and that. I'd think, well, I've won this. And that happened a lot. I mean, out of all my losses, I could honestly, at least 100 of them losses have been by half a point. And that's always been in their backyard, not in my backyard. So really, I've had 12 draws on my record. It's 12 wins because they weren't in my hometown. It was in theirs. So you know yourself. The thing was, when you're going as a away fighter, as a journeyman as well, you're 2 rounds down straight away. I don't care what any of the refs say, and I know that they can talk shit, right? Your rounds down before you even got in the ring, because they don't look at it as the kid having a bad night, right? Or you having a good night. They look at the kid having a bad night. So you're down already, and like, don't forget, they work for the promoter. The promoter pays their wages. So they're giving bad decisions out. The referee's the promoter's like, I ain't having him on the show. So when it's a close fight, 9 times out of 10, very rare, it's going in their favour. Do you know what I mean? So, it's like when I used to go to Scotland. I mean, I boxed Donny Hood in Scotland. Donny Hood was a good fighter. And I absolutely beat him. I beat him over 8 rounds. And I paid for the video. I paid the video man £15. I'll send you the video down, son. Yeah. Never ever got the video. Do you know what I mean? And I lost by about 3 rounds. Even the Scottish crowd was booing the decision, and they said to me, "You won that, but what do you do? I can't appeal to anyone. Who am I? I want to appeal against that decision. Don't work like that. You know your role. So what do? Do you pack it in and not earn no money, or let them have a laugh on you? No. So sometimes I'll go to a fight and I think, this kid's fuck all tonight. You know what I mean? So what I'll do, I'll have a move out of him, and I'll treat it like a sport. People have actually said to me, Pete, pardon me, they say boxing ain't bent. It is bent in a way, right? Because they'd say to me, come down here and have a move out this kid. We'll give you an extra 500 quid on top. Don't hurt him. He sells a lot of tickets. And I've done that countless times. Like, the phone me, Pete, will you come and fight tomorrow? Where, just little 6-2s down in Manchester. Fight this kid. He sold a lot of tickets. So we're going to look after you. Don't just have a move out of him. I mean, I've actually boxed kids, and they've said to me, like, have a move out of him. And I've hit him with a shot because the kid's been crap. And he's gone all over the place. And the corner's like, Peter. I'm like, yeah, right. So I've just gone back. I've treated it like a spar. But, and got paid for it, basically. That's all it is.
Yeah, well, I mean, that obviously really shows the business side of it, 100%.
Yeah,
It's obviously not the first time anyone will have heard about that, but yeah,
but
it makes a lot of sense with the mindset side of things. What do you think can be done though in the sport now to stop some of these bad decisions that are happening? Because even in recent months, we've
uh,
seen a few, you know.
everyone sees a fight different, don't they? Right? It's like, don't forget, you're sitting three. If it's judges, there's three of them are getting all the different angle of a fight. So one judge is seeing something that another judge don't see, and the vice versa. But when it's a referee, sometimes can, everyone's interprets that you might like a defensive fight, you might like an attacking fight, or a cat. Everyone's got their own what they like, what their own perspective. So you can't really say, oh, he's like the other night there was a Coley fight the other night. I thought Coley lost out of sight. One of the judges had it a draw. Well, Billam Smith had put him over 3 times, so there's 3-10-8 rounds. Then he got deducted a couple of points. So what fight are they actually watching? I don't understand like with that, like that kind of decision. It's like Josh Taylor and Jack Cattrall. Anyone with eyes knew Jack Cattrall won that fight. You know, you don't even have to be a boxing connoisseur or be interested. You only have to look who hit who the most. Jack Cattrall, Josh Taylor the most. Did he have an off night? Maybe, but that don't mean nothing. They should give it the kid who won the fight. Jack Cattrall clearly won that fight. Cost him millions and millions of pounds because he went from he would have been undisputed light welterweight champion of the world to now he just fought the other day for a WBA Intercontinental title. So it could have changed his life. That win, it would have secured him forever, really. I mean, his first defence, he would have earned a couple of £1 million. And they've robbed it of him and like, that's wrong, but what do you do? What can you do, basically? Do you know what I mean? The powers that be in it.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, this is both sides of the coin, isn't it? Like at the beginning,
Yeah.
talking about how boxing saves lives, and it does. It saves a lot more lives than what it takes. But at the same time, there is the corruption, and there is that dodgy side of people getting shafted, basically, for want of a
Yeah,
better
they do, yeah.
royally, you know. So
Mhm.
it's the thing. So we've talked about some good things so far. Now earlier on you mentioned about training kids and you mentioned about that and then you mentioned about looking after your mum and everything. But in terms of like your future plans, is that something that you want to do more with? Or what are some of your plans from from here on out, from 2023 onwards and everything? Like good to talk about the future a bit as well and what your ambitions are.
Well, look, say I'm not involved in boxing anymore. Like when I first packed it, I was still involved in it quite a lot for a few years, and then my mum and that. So no, like I take my grandson down the gym, and they keep asking me to get involved, but I haven't got the time. I got work. I've got 4 grandsons. One of them does taekwondo. He's like green belt in that now. So I'm literally coming home from work some days. I'm dropping one to taekwondo, dropping one to boxing, coming back, picking. I haven't got the time to do it. I'd love to. If I had the time, I'd love to do it. Because it is a passion of mine. When I was training the amateurs, from kids who had never put on gloves to see them actually in the ring, I couldn't do the corner. For this, watching them win fights, it was great. It was really, filled me with pride that I'd trained these kids. And they went out and won the first amateur fight, and see this look on the face when they've done it. It was absolutely brilliant. And knowing that I've trained them to do that, but I haven't got the time to do it now. I'll go to work and I'll come home and I just want to lie in the city for a couple of hours and watch the TV. And like I say, I teach my grandson a bit of boxing and that, and he listens. But I wouldn't get heavily involved in it again. Like I say, I haven't got the time to do it. I'd love to, but I haven't got the time.
No, that's fair enough. That's fair enough, 100%. Well, as I mentioned at the beginning, it's just good that you're happy, you're healthy. You've got so much recognition for everything you've achieved, and can't ask for more than that, really.
Right.
So, I'd like to thank you for your time, mate. I'd like to say it's been an absolute pleasure talking with you today. I've wanted to interview you for a long time, so on a personal note, it's a real pleasure. And I know, obviously, with this, we've probably only scratched the surface. I mean, there's so
Yeah,
many stories. But what I'll say to everybody listening to this, if you want to know more, read the book, guys. King of the
that's it.
If you want
Yeah.
to rest, read the book. That's where you need to go, and it's available out there on the internet. It's available everywhere. So get yourselves a copy. Pete, thank you so much for your time, mate. I'd say best wishes to you and your family. And
Cheers.
yeah, just thank you for everything.
Cheers. Thanks a lot. Take care.
Cheers. Have a good day,
Cheers.
mate. Take it
And you,
easy.
mate. Thank you. Bye.
Bye
Bye.
now. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe to the Simply Inspired YouTube channel, and there'll be more videos coming soon.